Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name is FPL Phillips and here's your Game Week 36 episode of your quick guide. Make sure to subscribe if you're new around here and do enjoy the video. Leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy it at the end as well. Without any further ado, let's get into things and kick things off with who you should captain this week in your FPL teams. And we're jumping straight into it, and what I want you to let me know straight away down in the comments below today is when you get on the video and you see it's timestamped along the bottom, do you just skip to each section? Let me know down below in the comments. Be honest, because let's be honest, we all do that on certain YouTube videos. Is this one of the videos you do as well? I want to know down below in the comments. That is today's question. Maybe we'll make this a weekly running thing where we ask one particular question. But yeah, I'm interested to hear your guys' feedback and what would make you, I suppose, a little bit more engaged, or are you just here and interested in seeing the graphics and all the tools that Fantasy Football Fix has to offer? But anyway, let's get into things. For those of you who are here for the captaincy discussion, I've had to narrow it down, and of course, I could have considered all the Brighton midfielders in this. I could have considered Isaac and also Wilson, and then I've got Trippier in as well. And I think it was so tight between Mitoma and McAllister, and then also between Isaac and Wilson, that it kind of just depends on what type of FPL player you are, whether you want to go between those two different ones. Personally, I think Mitoma does just outweigh McAllister. McAllister with the penalty threat does have better underlying data than Mitoma. However, when you take away that penalty and look at the data over the last couple of weeks, Mitoma is still outscoring McAllister in terms of expected goals, not including the penalty, just to specify, and then also expected assists as well. Do go in favour of Mitoma, but it is rather close. Solly March is underperforming, both of them, if he is indeed fit for Game Week 36, which isn't looking likely at the moment. So Mitoma, I think, would be my pick of the bunch from the Brighton boys, if that's where you want to go. But they definitely have the tougher set of fixtures, as we can see in the captaincy matrix here. Arsenal and Newcastle's defensive numbers, expected goals conceded per 90, 1.09 and 1.04. And when we compare that to Leeds and Brighton, they have weaker defences, so 1.66 and 1.717 for those two defences there. So it's no question, really, Newcastle have the better fixtures, and I think the majority of us will probably be looking to put the armband on a Newcastle player. And I think there is a case for why it should be your forward or attacking player, maybe even a midfielder, which we'll get onto when we talk about the predicted points and the top 10 scorers for this week. Personally, I think it's just whoever you own. If you choose to go with Isaac and you choose to go with Wilson, then you've got a decision to be made if you've got both of them. But I think you have to just pick one that you think you want to captain, and then that's going to probably decide who you're going to transfer in. When it comes to numbers, it's no question really that Wilson has the better expected data per 90. It's just taking that risk on his minutes and whether you want to decide to do that. I think when both of them play, which we've seen with Newcastle, Isaac's going to play out wide, Wilson's going to be the more focal point, and he's going to have penalties as well, it seems, when he is on the pitch. Wilson is the more senior player. So personally, he's my favourite pick, and I think if you're looking to maybe chase a better rank, taking the gamble and going with Wilson is probably the cool thing to do as well. Whereas Isaac, maybe if you're looking to preserve rank slightly, that kind of higher ownership, you could maybe go with him. It's just a little bit of a less exciting pick, in my opinion. Whilst he does have the safer minutes, you're kind of trading that off for, I suppose, a slightly worse set of underlying statistics. But both equally good options for their own respective reasons. It depends who you want to go for, and it could end up being a brutal point swing, or they could score very similarly. It is just one of those calls which, is impossible to predict with any certainty, and could end up just being a toss of the coin in this game week. We've then got Trippier here, so I thought I'd compare him, and I know we've not been able to add in a separate set of data, but I'll run through the statistics now with the Newcastle defence. They actually don't look as strong as they have done through that earlier periods of the season. I think you can tell that by watching Newcastle, but they're around 6th or 7th, maybe down towards 10th when we look at expected data. In terms of expected goals conceded, that's where they are. They're kind of almost mid-table now for defensive data, and they don't look as strong as they have. Trippier also, on an individual note, has looked poorer when it comes to expected FPL points. I've used the OptaStats tool over on Fantasy Football Fix to analyse this, and I recommend you guys do too. Links in the description for that tool. But actually, Fabian Schär over the last 5 game weeks has very slightly better data than in Trippier when it comes to going forward. Expected goal involvements, expected FPL points do go in favour of going for him, which kind of shows, I think, not only that Shah, got to give him a bit of credit, he has always had a pretty decent level of underlying attacking data, but Trippier has had a bit of a drop-off, and we've seen that with a lack of returns, really, from the right-back recently. So I think, in conclusion, going with a Newcastle attacker is probably the cool thing to do. I think it's the smart thing to do as well. Isak or Wilson, whichever way you go, I think is probably the smart move this week for captaincy. Could always go with a single game week player if you want to take, I don't know, maybe it seems a little bit more of a risk this week going with Erling Haaland. With the fact that they've got the Real Madrid return leg coming up, I think it's probably a week where you can afford to go away from Haaland and not get as hurt as you would have done in other game weeks this season. So we'll move into the top 10 predicted point scorers then, where we are going to see a feature from the Norwegian, and he comes into the top 10 despite only having a single game week with Man City's fixture against Everton. But the top 10 is, as expected, mainly made up of Newcastle and Brighton assets, given they're the ones with a double game week in game week 36. And it is Trippier who does come in up the top. I think a lot of that is going to be due to kind of algorithms' loyalty to him due to earlier performances in the season. But 8.5 predicted points is definitely something that is worth taking note of. Nick Pope then comes in on 7.7 with the other Newcastle assets quite a lot further down. You can see Botman and Cher all the way down on 6.5 and 6.6 apiece towards the bottom end of the top 10. In the third, we've got a very interesting asset, and I kind of alluded to a midfielder for Newcastle potentially earlier in the video, and that is Joe Willock, who I think has been one of Newcastle's strongest players over the last couple of game weeks, especially. I've not seen all the matches, but in the last game for Newcastle, he looks really strong, and I think he could be a really nice punt. I think the difficulty with getting Willock in is that you might have a Solly March in your team, but you might already have triple Newcastle, and then it's a case of, if you've got 2 free transfers, is it worth switching across someone like a Botman to another defender in order to bring in Willock in midfield if you're already tripled up? But if you're not tripled up on Newcastle, you've got that Newcastle slot open, maybe your own Solly March, and its injury news is looking more and more concerning, then I think making the move across to Joe Willock could be a really sensible move, and only requires 1 free transfer, most likely, due to the fact that Willock is only priced at 4.7 million. He does look a really cheap option, could be on the bench for the final few game weeks of the season. So as a 1 week punt, if you're looking to chase rank, I really like the look of the Newcastle midfielder. We've then got Matoma on 7.2, as we saw, with Isak on 6.7. Bruno Guimaraes is a very interesting one. I wasn't expecting him to make it into the top 10 predicted points, but he is in there above some of the other Newcastle assets and Brighton players. And to be honest, I would sway away from Guimaraes, but the algorithm and the computer has definitely proven me wrong before, so as always, this is just my opinion. And then finally, we've got Steele at the bottom, who'll be looking to have a better game week than in game week 35. It was really unlucky for owners with that own goal, but 6.4 predicted points for him. I don't really see a clean sheet in this week for Brighton. They've got Newcastle and Arsenal, 2 away fixtures that look really difficult on paper. I'm not sure I could see too much chances, as I mentioned, of a clean sheet, but save points, bonus, if they do manage to come away with a clean sheet, could end up having a pretty decent high ceiling, as is always the case when a keeper has a tough set of fixtures, I suppose. But yeah, that's going to round off the top 10 predicted points. We're now just going to take a bit of a look at the upcoming fixtures for the final few game weeks of the season. We only have 3 weeks left now, of course. Time to start taking a few risks if we're looking to change rank. And this is probably my favourite time of the season, where we get to go out and have a bit of fun. And now these rankings, I suppose, taken from the fixture analyzer of the Fantasy Football Fix website, are a little bit skewed by the fact that, we've got some double game weeks coming up, and we've got teams with 2 double game weeks in the form of Brighton. They've got Arsenal, Newcastle this week, which, as mentioned, are tough games. Their only real easy fixture, I suppose you'd say, is maybe Southampton in game week 37 at home. Looks a nice match. However, Southampton are in the struggle of their lives in the relegation battle at the moment, and you never know, they could pull out one of their results like they did against Arsenal and maybe really go for it in these final few game weeks, whereas Brighton, you'd argue, have a little bit less to play for, just kind of up towards the European spots. Brighton then come in second for defensive fixture difficulty. If you cast your eyes over to the right-hand side as well, they're only bettered by Manchester United over the final few game weeks, and I think we already probably own someone like a Luke Shaw in our team, so not too much to discuss there. Newcastle are in second for attacking fixture difficulty and in fourth for defensive fixture difficulty. We've already discussed them in quite a lot of depth. We've got Manchester City, unsurprisingly, coming in. They've got a pretty nice run to end the season with a double game week in game week 37, as well as a pretty nice fixture against Everton as well, although they are coming off the bounce of a very nice win in game week 35. They've got the game with Newcastle in game week 38 as well, which isn't the easiest fixture. Newcastle fighting to try and get a top 4 spot too. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one on the final day. And then finally, it's Chelsea who come in as a team in the bottom 5. So it's the same 5 teams, just in a different order for attacking and defensive fixture difficulty. Chelsea, very difficult team to invest in anyone from at the moment. The defence looks shambolic. The attack are scoring a very few amount of goals. And when they do, they've got so many attacking players that it's hard to kind of nail down one and pick one who's a standout asset, like someone like a Marcus Rashford was at United earlier in the season. Although they weren't scoring many goals either, Rashford, you could bank on him pretty much being the attacker every time that was going to be involved in the goal. And where Chelsea have such a massive squad and there's quite a lot of rotation that goes on, just avoid is my advice. Manchester United are third for the attacking fixture difficulty, and I do want to mention that as a United fan, I do feel that United are looking a bit fatigued. I think it is catching up with them. It's probably a good job they're not in the Europa League anymore. We could be seeing that to an even greater extent. Whether Ten Hag can bring them back and rally the troops for the final 3 game weeks of the season, I suppose we shall see. But we've seen Manchester United slip up time and time again, perhaps becoming a bit more frequent as of late as well. So I don't think it's worth tearing up your team to get someone like a Bruno Fernandes in for game week 37 when that comes about. The fixture order is slightly wrong there, I should say. Apologies for that, but Manchester United have the double in game week 37, not in game week 36 this week. But yeah, that is going to wrap up this week's fixtures. The fixture set is actually correct over on the right for Manchester United, so just look at that. And once again, apologies, that will be connected over on the website. Go and check out the full fixture analyzer tool down in the description. Cheers for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back for Eddie versus the algorithm tomorrow, and things are hotting up there for the final few game weeks of the season as well. Make sure you tune into that if you are following along with how I get on against the computer. Thank you for watching, everyone. Comment down below if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.